Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining us. As I say each and every time, I know you guys have got lots of choices, so I appreciate you guys spending time with us. Today, we are joined by a technologist that I got introduced through a mutual friend, and I think Lucas is doing some really cool stuff. But Lucas, before you jump into kind of what you guys are doing on the professional side, tell us a little bit about who Lucas is and how did we come to meet, and how did you get to where you are today?
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, for inviting me to be on the show. We got introduced by Steven Rono, a good friend of mine here in LA and a friend of yours as well. And then the best connector ever that I met since I moved to the US, awesome guy. And then again, as you mentioned, and then since I moved to the US, but and talk a little bit about myself, I'm half Brazilian, half American. I grew up in Brazil with a lot of good connections there. We're just not talking about picanha, churrasco, and that's my background. And I came to the US about 11 years ago, actually. And I was working as a lawyer, a full time job lawyer, I had my own law office. And when I came to the US, I came especially to take a master's at USC. And then after basically 1 year away from my law office, I was like, you know what? I want to do this technology thing. I want to be entrepreneur again. I want to start my own new thing, my own technology company. So long story short, I transitioned from being a full-time lawyer to a entrepreneur within the market research industry, customer experience, AI, understanding people. It's more like we create a company that it's a bit people understanding company. Like, we understand consumers, we understand what they think, why they go to places, why they don't go to places, why they like competitors, why they like these or that kind of product or service. And then we transform that into specifics, do's and don'ts for operators to boost their sales, boost their connection to their clients. Anyways, again, it's interesting how I never thought in my life that I would go from being a lawyer to a full-time tech founder, but here I am after a couple of years dealing and running Fritz. That's the position now.
And I love entrepreneurial stories like that. I had a previous guest on and I tease him from time to time because he was like, I don't know, he was like, he went from welding or plumbing to being a marketing guy. And I'm like, how does this happen? So from your story, walk me through that journey. What took you down that path to being you came to the US, study, get your master's law, and then you decided. Tell me a little bit more about why you decided to start Freats. And before we dig into deep understanding of what it is that you guys are solving. I'd love to hear the origin story of where it came from. And was it something that you were frustrated about, or was it just something that you saw a problem in the market that you said, hey, there's people that are going to be willing to spend money on this? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, even the transitioning from a lawyer to entrepreneur, that goes back to my childhood. It's an interesting story, even though it's silly, but that's my story to that extent. That when I was 5 years old, and I remember that like it was yesterday. When I was 5 years old, I used to go to my family beach house, still in Brazil, and we would go to the beach and then stay there the whole day. But then at some point, I would stop playing with my friends and family. I would go get sand. I would get sand. I would get shells, and so I would collect a lot of things from the beach, and then I would go back home, get mayonnaise jar. At the time was all glass, and then I would just decorate that thing, go to the front porch, and just sell it like a business person, like a salesperson. When I was 5 years old, and then funny story that a couple of years ago, my sister saw she found a journal that she used to write when she was younger, and then she was like, "Oh, Lucas now is selling jars." And anyways, it was an awful kind of jar, but I was there selling. So I believe that my entrepreneurial, let's say, blood or skin or willingness was always there. And even as a lawyer, I was managing I created my law office. I opened my office. I was the manager. I was an entrepreneur as a lawyer as well. But then my master's here in the US, it was, even though it was a business law master's, it was, I would say, 90% focused on venture capital, balance sheet, and then international transactions and everything way more practical, entrepreneurial lifestyle, but not necessarily understanding law or applying law. And a little before coming also to take the master's, I was investing in companies in Brazil. I invested back then in 2012. I invested like in four companies. We wouldn't call them startup companies back then. We would call, oh, my friends my friends have a computer company, whatever. No, nobody would actually call it startups. So I was investing in these companies, and then after 1 year here in the masters, I just decided that, you know what, I think that 5-year-old kid that wants to be Sally and be an entrepreneur, I think he wants to get back there. So I decided to sell my law office. At the time, as I mentioned, I had this investment. So I bought the half of the company that I had with my partner in the investment company. And at some point, I was doing investments in startup companies, technology companies. So from 2014 to 2017, I was investing in people's dreams. And at some point, I was, again, you know what? I wanted my dream. I want to invest in my dream, which is creating my tech company and pushing forward with all the abilities and skill set that I have and had at the time. And that was how I got to that moment in which I decided that I would open my own company, my own technology company, and that came Freatz.
Yeah, and I appreciate that backstory. It's always funny to think back about some of those early days, and you talk about remembering it like it was yesterday. That the 5-year-old that's, hey, what can I sell? How can I go create value for somebody? Because clearly, your mayonnaise jar that was glass that had sand and shells in it, somebody saw value in it and said, you know what, this kid went and worked hard to go make this happen. And so, talk to us. What is Freaks? And I know you and I chatted about it pre-show, but it comes from the amalgamation of two different words. But what is Freaks? And then we can talk a little bit about kind of the problems that it solves for people.
So Fritz, the word Fritz comes from free eats, and then just change the S for the Z to make it more modern, whatever, and then uh, got both words together. So that's Fritz. Again, free eats is an idea that if we want to get people's opinion, if we want to get people's understanding, we have to get that kind of incentive to have them share their opinion. So that's basically the origin of the name. Free eats in the sense that we're going to provide a free food in exchange for your opinion because your opinion matters. But in other words, what we are solving here is the lack of knowledge. And that also my connection with my previous years as a lawyer, I'm always trying to understand, get the most knowledge that I can, the knowledge about everything that I can, and then transform that into a good thesis for the lawsuit, whatever. So when we are dealing with understanding consumers, we have to really understand everything that is happening within that experience. So the biggest problem that we saw in the market today, that's still a reality nowadays, is the lack of knowledge. And
Mhm.
of course, you need all of us, we know that we need data, especially hospitality businesses. We know that we need data about our consumers, if they like, if they don't like, and etc. And then we also know that there are so many sources out there for consumer perception data that they're not quite complete. They're not quite reliable in terms of the quality of the data set, and they are very limited, or sometimes they're so expensive that no one will actually pay for that. So there is a big problem in the market that no one is actually really pay attention to consumers. No one is really understanding how to wow people, how to get the most of the experience, and how to give back to these consumers, which are, by the way, the most important people that you serve to, how to give back their experience, what their expectations actually. So when you put all of that together, it's finding the best way to collect consumer perception, to understand consumer perception in a reliable way, accurate way, and then with nice volume of people, of metrics, and etc. And that's how, when you get that reliability in terms of the data set they're collecting, that's when you can actually extract knowledge out of this. So that's a combination that we were able to solve, understanding that there is a lack in the market in terms of consumer knowledge, consumer understanding. And we created that mechanism, that method to aggregate a lot of data directly from consumers and transform that into revenue growth, into better quality perception, into finding hidden opportunities within the day-to-day operation. And that's it. Just a way to have that better understanding. And by the way, really interesting to mention that everything at no cost, because if we want to really get people's opinion, as I mentioned, we need volume, and no one would pay for a huge volume of information if that was too expensive. So we needed
Mhm.
to create a way that made just data collection profitable for everyone involved, or at least no cost for our clients. And that's a game changer as well.
And so, Lucas, you talk about what you guys are doing, but what are most restaurants that before they engage with Freaks doing? You and I talked about it pre-show. There's lots of different places to get this data. And historically, at least when I talk to restaurant operators, they only hear about the really bad ones or the really good ones. They don't hear about anything in between. And that creates a false sense of either dread if they only hear the really bad ones, or it creates a false sense of security if they only hear about the people that have exceptional experiences. And the other piece that you talked about, and I'll let you riff on it here for a few minutes, is the volume is typically very low. single digit percentages historically has been how it has gone versus getting up into the 50, 60, 70% of people are giving you feedback. So talk to me a little bit about historically, how have people gotten that feedback and what is the misnomer about just using Google reviews and Yelp and OpenTable or whatever those tools are to get that data?
Before I answer that, something that's interesting to have in mind as well is that when we talk a reliable data set, we need volume, as I mentioned, but volume divides into two main type of volumes. One would be volume of people, which is the one that you're mentioning, that X% of people that are actually being public about super dislike that experience. But also there is a second component of the volume, which is number of metrics being assessed. If you are surveying someone, or maybe if you get that poll, that survey that has only two, three, four, five, six, 10 questions, your perception is very limited of what's happening. Because as an operator, you don't have 10 things you have to pay attention to. You have 100, 200 things that you have to pay attention to. So in order for you as an operator to understand if whatever the temperature, the bathroom, or the speedness, or the host, or if you want to understand who is impacting or what's impacting your business or your ability to wow people, you have to survey everything. And then you have to drill down to, okay, now that I know 100 things that are happening, what are the most important things? So that volume of KPIs, volume of metrics that you need to assess, that's also really important. So when we go back to the market, what's there in the market today, it's very, in our opinion, it's very flawed in terms of understanding consumer perception and understanding the correlation between what are you doing that is or is not, it isn't impacting the ability to wow people. You have several tools that are important to avoid a bad review, a bad experience from going public, or you gather a lot of information online that you see some things on Google review, Yelp, or TripAdvisor, and then these platforms will just combine everything in one platform. These are amazing tools to help the operators to actually understand what's being said, but if you want to find operational opportunities, or if you want to find what's driving your wellness up or down, you need more people, you need more indicators being assessed. And if you go back to your question, if you go to Google review, you won't be able to find it. If you go to Yelp, you won't be able to find it. If you go to traditional secret shopping companies, you won't be able to find it. It's either it's somewhat expensive. Companies will hire only one, two secret shoppers every 1 or every 2 or every 3 months. And you don't have enough sample size, and they are the wrong consumers usually. So they're being trained to be critics. But when you get tablet surveys, it's very limited as well. You have up to 5 to 7 to 10 questions. You don't see everything. And then you have, I don't want to get too technical, but you have that what's called the self-selection bias. People who are
Okay.
actually getting that tablet to answer, they are either super positive or super negative. People that are going to Google review, they're either super positive or super negative. And we at Freatz, we are getting the best understanding from people that you as an operator do not know about. People that come and go and you don't have their name, you don't know who they are, where they came from, and then they're not going online to say good or bad things about you. So it's a 99% of the people that you serve to that you never survey because they're not going again online to share their opinion. But that's the average consumer that you serve to. So that's the kind of people that you have to understand. That's why it's interesting to have in mind that when we send 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 people per month per location, and we're sending the right consumers to these locations, that's a really good source of information to know exactly what's happening across your product, service, physical environment, the ability to have that emotional connection with your clients. Anyway, so that's a little bit of how we stand out compared to whatever is out there in the market. And again, as I mentioned, everything at no net cost. So it's amazing to have the opportunity to have a deep, really deep understanding of your real consumers, not the biased consumers, but your real consumers, the 99% of consumers that you serve to in a matter that you don't have to pay for.
Yeah, I have a myriad of questions, Lucas. So I'm going to start down the path of as a consumer, what is the experience like for me? We can get as technical as you need to. One of the challenges that you have historically with survey companies is that it's hard. In the past, we've had Tattle on the show, we've had Ovation on the show, we've had SMG on the show. So we've had different survey companies that have done that. We've had Yelp on the show in the past. So they all take a different approach, but historically, they find that people aren't willing to spend the time and willing to spend the energy. You probably get
Yeah.
10 surveys a week sent to you via email. Tell me how this product was. Tell me how this service was. And if it's not easy, you choose not to. Or if you had a really good example or really bad example, you might take the time to do it. But otherwise, you know what? If it's what I expected, I'm okay. So talk to me a little bit about, as a consumer, let's talk about that experience, because I think it's critical to making sure the restaurants understand that it is a value add for the consumer as well as for your brand. And then we can talk about how the brand deals with it.
Yeah, no one wants to get opinion from voucher seekers, right? People are just there just for the money or etc. On the other side, no one is actually willing to share their opinion if they have no upside on that. Just
Hmm.
because they want to share their opinion will be again either super positive or super negative. So
Yep.
the way around that is that you have to incentivize people to answer surveys. But again, we don't want to voucher seekers. So we created the base of the creation of this company is that we're not creating a panel of respondents. We're creating a community of opinion leaders. We're creating a community of foodies or a community of consumers that like to share their opinion, that like to help places to grow. And then they are, of course, they are getting reimbursed in exchange for their opinion, but most likely they are liking the fact that they were being important to to that restaurant. And then there are several ways and several avenues for us to make sure that we are actually building that community. And one of them, not to mention all of them, but one of them is giving back to these consumers what their opinion, how their opinion helped these places. So every now and then, let's say every 3 to 4 to 6 months, we have a report that is directed to the consumers to say, you know what, consumers, now we have just collected 10, 20, 15, 30, 40, 50,000 surveys. And these 50,000 surveys helps X, Y, and Z restaurants, X, Y, and Z jobs. And you're important because you created X, Y, and Z different products. So it's actually, we're providing that feedback back to them because and they like to know they're being helpful. They're helping and they want to be also helping more and more. That's one point. The second point is that even though they are sharing their opinion in exchange for a cashback could be, it isn't like a 1, 2, 3% cashback. They're getting like a full meal. They're getting 20, 30, 50, 40, $50 in cashback. So it's actually more like a reimbursement, but not necessarily a cashback. But they are not doing only one restaurant per month. They're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 per week. So after the full month, it's basically another salary they're getting, right? Because
Hmm.
they get their salary, they pay, but then they're getting the cash back. So it's an extra money that they're making at the end of the month. So it's very profitable for the consumers. And at the end of the day, they're answering a survey that will take maybe 5 to 7 minutes. That's something, of course, we pay attention to, even though it's a long survey basically around 50 to 60 questions. It's very long. But at the same time, it is designed in a way that people will go through 60 questions, let's say again, in 5 to 6 minutes. It's super quick,
Hmm.
fast, and then it's a good combination that everyone wins. We are getting paid, the restaurant is paying, but they're getting that money back to their revenue. So it's actually profitable for them, as I mentioned, and I can explain more in detail. And then the consumers are getting financial incentive as well. So it's a win-win situation that just helps the methodology to work, which is we need volume of people, volume of metrics, and that will lead to greater understanding of that place.
And you talked about the fact that I love that idea that you guys are giving the consumers the feedback about what they're impacted. I say it all the time. Oftentimes when people complain, it's because they want you to be better. They want you to hear them and acknowledge them and then fix it. And so those brands that can pivot and hear what the guests are saying. And again, you're always going to have those guests that are going to be the, what did you call them? Voucher seekers. You've got those guests that are only doing the survey for that. But many of them, I love the fact that you guys are focusing in on those that are trying to make the brand better. As a restaurateur, what does it look like? Because, if and again, I was just talking to a restaurant operator this week at a trade show, and we were talking about how what are you guys doing with this data? Are you using it to impact your menu selection? Are you using it to change your service styles? Are you using it to change packaging? I was just on the phone. I was just recording a podcast earlier with a brand that changed their packaging for their fried foods to something different because their complaints came back that the fried foods were constantly soggy when they were delivered. Great feedback tool, great opportunity to make the guest experience better. If you don't do it, ultimately the guests are going to be dissatisfied or they're going to go away and you're not going to know about it. So, as a restaurateur, how do I receive this data and how does it not get overwhelming that I'm just getting inundated with 50,000 surveys and I don't know what to I'm playing whack-a-mole, like that game at the carnival where you're hitting the little mole that pops up and you gotta hit this one, and then you gotta hit this one, you gotta hit this one. Tell me a little bit about the restaurant experience and how they're getting this data to make it actionable because restaurateurs have so much on their plates. It's really hard to focus if you're not directing their energy.
Anybody that's ever run a restaurant knows the craziness that happens during a meal period in a rush. One of our partners, Restaurant Technologies Total Oil Management Solution, is an end to end oil management system that delivers, filters, monitors, and recycles your cooking oil, taking one of the jobs that none of your team wants to do and takes it off your hands, allowing your team members to focus on their guest. Control the kitchen chaos with restaurant technologies and make your kitchen safer while maximizing your staff's time. The solution can be provided at no upfront cost. If you want to learn more, please check out rti-inc.com or call 888-796-4997.
So yeah, it's a great question. And then a lot of operators will say, Lucas, I have so much data that I don't know what to do with that. And
Yep.
then that again goes back to the origin of the company, which is we needed not only to make sure that we have the best data set possible, but also make sure that every every cross analysis that we do, every way that we understand that data set is actually usable by the operators, right? By the restaurateur. Because it doesn't make sense to be another a data company out there sharing a lot of reports that will not be used. So again, when I say that we are tracking like 100 metrics, I'm not saying that we're going to be providing you 100 metrics to our clients. Actually, we need, as I mentioned, we need to track everything. So then we can somewhat, it isn't the best explanation, but it's a good one. We can apply that Pareto, like the 80-20 rule to understand, okay, what's the 20% that you have to pay attention to that will lead to 80% of your results. But again, to get to that 20%, I have to have a greater perception of everything that's happening. When we collect that data, we're making sure again that we are cross analyzing that data and break it down into small specific reports. So we have more than 70 reports, and each one of these reports have either two, three, four slides, or they are on the dashboard, or it's a really quick and direct message on an email. So it's a very bite-sized information, very like small and bite-sized information that it's easy to take actions on, right? And then one of the reports that we have, for example, is what we call the revenue growth plan of action, in
Hmm.
which we'll understand everything that is happening in that place and applying what we call the cause and effect relationship. Maybe, in other words, finding correlation and causation. We'll understand, okay, what's the best course of action, which is basically a one slide. What's the best course of action for you as an operator to implement X, Y, and Z actions? And then you would see a greater revenue, greater quality perception, greater reputation, and etc. So it's all about making sure that it's simple to use. The dashboard
Hmm.
is simple to use. The PDFs is simple to understand, and they read, they know the actions, and then take actions. And then, of course, next month they can see how much they grew in terms of again finance, revenue, or maybe quality perception.
To me, you mentioned it in the onset about the use of AI to capture this data. How are you guys? It wouldn't be a technology podcast in 2024 if we didn't talk about AI and in some way, shape, or form. So, talk to me a little bit about how AI is helping accelerate the learnings that you guys are having, and then ultimately able to deliver back to the restaurateur.
Awesome. So basically, AI is the base foundation of our company. We don't everything that we do since from the moment the consumer shares their opinion, again, it isn't one consumer, but many consumers, we don't do anything else. It's just a click of a button, everything is ready. And then that a click of a button will bring machine learning because we have so many different restaurants being analyzed, and we know exactly what each restaurant is doing in terms of what are the actions they're implementing, that we know which action works better than others. And then the machine learning is analyzing everything. And then also we have image analysis, automated analysis, which is we receive so many pictures directly from the consumers. And these pictures may have a burger, a pizza, a soda, whatever it is. And then the AI is actually analyzing if there is any problem. What's the ranking between all the products that we're receiving, and what's the top performer and then the worst performer, depending on not necessarily sales, but the quality perception. And then we have also sentiment analysis. All these surveys, not only they have to answer multiple choice questions, but also they have to type a few comments. So that
Hmm.
sentiment analysis is automatically understanding what they like, what they don't like, and how to, again, find hidden opportunities. So it's all about AI. We didn't do anything. And in our understanding, an AI company can be summarized in so many different ways. In our way, one of the ways that we can say that we are an AI company is that we have algorithm thinking for a human. We have 100, 200, 1,000 surveys. It's a lot of lines in a spreadsheet. It's a lot of millions of lines in a code. But then press a button, the algorithm will understand everything and will spit one page saying, okay, that's the best page for you if you want to increase revenue by X%. And there is a direct correlation between increasing wow factor and increasing revenue. That's just
Yeah.
amazing how technology can get that far.
And I think it's something that we are constantly gonna continue to innovate, and I think the use of AI, like I said, I just got back from a trade show, and the amount of people that were talking about how AI is accelerating staff and guests' ability to make decisions has been incredible. Talk to me about a couple of success stories, Lucas, from a couple of the brands that you guys worked with. What does it look like? Is it a 1% increase in sales? Is it a 1% increase in customer retention? Is it a talk to me a little bit about what people can expect if they move forward with something like Freatz?
Before I answer to that, something that I just thought about, going back to the AI question, which for me is interesting to explain, is that everyone knows about ChatGPT nowadays, and then you can ask
Yeah.
everything for ChatGPT, and then you'll answer. Sometimes we'll hallucinate. And then when talking about a hospitality company, when talking about a hospitality company, the understanding of what needs to be needs to be done goes back to the consumers because you're selling to these consumers and etc. So you cannot you can use ChatGPT to help you manage your restaurants because ChatGPT may know the base standard do's and don'ts for restaurants, but ChatGPT has no idea of your consumers' perception, your consumer expectations. Again, explaining what we do in another way, comparing with ChatGPT, I have a feature which we call the Freatz Assistant, which is basically ask anything. Oh, how do I increase sales? What about my pizza, whatever flavor? What about this? What about that? I can ask anything, and then the AI will actually bring the answer without hallucinating. But that answer will be based 100% on the consumer's perception of that specific place. So I'm not going to publicly I'm not gonna get answers of public sources, but ChatGPT usually does. But from specifically that group of consumers that will make or break that place. So that's another way just to show how far we went in terms of using AI to again ask a question. You got the answer based on your consumers, people who are paying the bills for you. Yeah, go ahead.
And I would say, so how do you deliver this for free? Like net free, it sounds too good to be true, Lucas. I am eager to hear how you're delivering this to these restaurants
Okay.
at a net no cost to them because I think it's like, what's the catch? Tell me what the catch is before they learn a little bit more about how to get in touch with you and sign up.
Awesome. And I do want to go back to the case studies later because that's interesting, very interesting question as well. But the no net cost actually is just the idea that at the end of the month, at the end of the campaign, let's say the survey campaign, the restaurant will actually have either no cost or actually will make profits out of that data collection process. So let me bring one example that will be easier to understand. So let's say we do a cashback. Let's say we do a survey that we are reimbursing $40 for that consumer. We'll launch that voucher in our platform. The consumer will reserve that voucher. And by reserving the voucher, the consumer knows that he or she will have $40 in that example if they go to the restaurant within 3 days, eat whatever they want to eat, pay with their money, go back to the website, fill out the survey. And as soon as that survey is approved, meaning it's a good survey, not that the rating is good, but it's a logical survey, we'll provide that cash back. Even though we're providing that $40 in cash back for that example, when the consumer goes to that place, he or she will not spend only $40. Because you know what? If I'm getting $40 in cash back, why not getting that dessert or maybe more drinks, more appetizer, whatever? So on average, our users are spending 50% on top of the cashback. So for that example, if they're getting $40, they'll be spending 60 just because they ate a $60 meal, but in their mind cost only 20 because they know they're getting $40. Not only this, but they don't want to go by themselves. They want to take friends and family with them. And these extra
Mhm.
people do not have the right to be reimbursed, but they're going there anyways because our users have the voucher. And these extra people, again, each one of them will spend, let's say, the average check in that location. So going back to the mathematics, if our users got $40 in cash back, but they spent 60, but then let's say they took one gas with them, that gas is spending another $40. So for that one experience in which we gave $40 in cash back, actually the bill was what here? $100,
Six,
right?
yeah, yeah, 100 with the
So
$40 discount, so net 60. Yeah,
exactly. So that's a profitable data collection. And of course, we have the service fee, which in our case, we want to make sure that we're creating volume. Everything is automated on our side. If we want to create volume and everything is automated, I don't need to charge 100, 200, $300 per survey. I can charge $10 per survey, sometimes even less. So it really depends on how the length of the contract or everything. But the point is, even if we charge $10 per survey plus the $40 for that example for the cashback, that consumer spend 100. Let's say they take two people with them, three, four, five. So the more gas they take with them, bigger the check, and then of course better revenue they'll have. And even if you discount the food cost, they're still making money. On
mhm,
average, to every $1,000 that is invested on Fritz, including cashback plus the service fee, we're generating 1,900 in sales. So that makes everything profitable, and that's the incentive that the operator needed in order to decide. Okay, you know what? If it's profitable, even though it isn't like a huge profit, it doesn't need to be a huge profit. We're not a sales channel. But if there is a profit, or even if it is even if it zeroes out, I invest 1,000 and we created like whatever, even if considering the food cost, even if the operator zeroes out the investment, they're still getting a lot of data that will help them increase revenue down the line. So if it's profitable or at least non net cost, why not survey 40, 50, 60, 70 people per month? And that's a
yeah.
catch.
And at the end of the day, those people are gonna come back because 'cause you're fixing their problems, and so, Lucas, why don't you talk through just one quick case study before we let people know how to get in touch with you? Because I know typically when I get to about that 35 to 40-minute mark, people start to tune out, and I start to see the retention drop off. So talk to me a little bit about somebody that you guys have done this for that really is seeing great results, both from the guest satisfaction and really issuing these surveys and what it's looked like for them and how it's helped their business grow.
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna give two quick examples because they add on to each other. One was a case that it's a brand. They have 130 locations, and then we run a pilot with them. It was an interesting one, a super recent this one. And then out of these 120, 130 locations, 10 locations were actually really paying attention to the data set. And in that for that 10 locations, we were able to understand what were the most important indicators that were driving their revenue down, or which were the actions they would need to take in order to increase that wow factor. And by increasing the wow factor, people would be happier, they would come back more, they would have less churn, they would just their NPS would be better. Anyway, so we're able to understand for that specific situation that friendliness was playing a good role in that, decoration as well, speedness, and then the last one was, ooh, let me remember here. Oh, flavor and quality. These are basic things, right? But these 10 stores, they really paid attention to that. They didn't change the menu items, they didn't change anything, was just paying attention to these four items. And they were able to implement actions, they were implemented training sessions, they set the expectation a little better for their consumers. Long story short, these 10 stores increase revenue by 17% compared to the other
Wow.
120 stores, just because they were nothing else happened. No competitor closed the doors across the street. Nothing else happens, but they were just paying attention. Of course, I'm just simplifying a much longer kind of case study, but the point is, after paying attention to their consumers, paying attention to the ability of wowing their consumers, they were able to increase their returning clients, their frequency as well, and that at the end of the month, actually at the end of the year, made them increase 17% in sales for that specific example. Another quick example here as well that's interesting, which is more like a hidden opportunity that we're able to uncover. With the first one was more trying to understand what impacts wow and how to wow people better. But the second one wasn't related to wowing people, but was more like a hidden opportunity, easy one to see, but no one was seeing. But this place, fine dining restaurant, full service, they were, for the past 6 months, they were increasing sales figure for wine. They were selling more wine for the past 6 months. But then when we ran the survey, so meaning they were happy with increasing sales figures for wine offering. After running the survey, we saw that only 13% of their waiters were actually being proactive in offering that wine. So
Oh,
we created this plan of action for them. They implemented a few actions to have the waiters increase that proactiveness for upselling wine. And after 3 to 4 months, they were able to increase average check by 20% because now more people are buying
oh,
wine. And of course, more people are the average checks just higher for as a whole for these consumers. And then that will impact overall average check across that experience, that place. Again, selling more or less wine wouldn't impact the wow factor, but that was a hidden opportunity that we're able to uncover, even though in the past 6 months they were increasing wine sales. Anyways, these are two quick examples that when you pay attention to wowing people, you can and you track that, can actually see value, see increase in revenue down the line.
yeah. The day the guests win, the restaurant wins, and as you said, everybody wins. So, how do people get in touch with you, Lucas? How do people learn more about other than if you're friends with Steven, you got to call Steven and say, "Hey, how do I get in touch with Lucas?" Which I'm teasing because it feels like Steven knows everybody, but teasing just a little bit. But how do people get in touch with Freatz? How do they learn more, figure out if it's right for their restaurant, and how they can implement a solution like what you guys have?
Quick way, LinkedIn, Lucas Judice at LinkedIn, or maybe Freatz.com to go directly to the institutional page, b2b.fritz.com. That's also another potential link. But whoever is willing to embrace that objective to wowing their customers in every touch point, if they are curious about really understanding how they are wowing people and then what are the metrics that will make people be more or less wowed, and if they are willing to track that wowness, that's a good starting point to have them think about, okay, what are the tools out there in the market? And do I want to go like full deep dive to really understand what's happening? Do I want to go more like just touch the surface, be not necessarily too deep? But anyways, there are space, there's room for a lot of potential avenues. But if they want to get in touch, if they are willing to get that tracking done, we are more than welcome to talk to them.
I love what you guys are solving for. I know there's lots of different ways that people are solving this problem, but you guys have some unique value proposition and some unique ways about going about it. So, Lucas, thank you for sharing some of your wisdom on how you guys are solving these problems. I always love entrepreneurs that are solving real world problems. To our listeners, guys, we know that you guys have got lots of choices. While you guys are online, go check out freaks.com, go check out restauranttechnologyguys.com, subscribe to the newsletter once a month. You get an email with all of the episodes. Lucas, thank you so much for your time, and to our listeners, make it a great day.